Welcome to the Post Podcast, where we aim to inform, connect, and inspire our community members. I am your host, Shamsa Mohan, and today we're joined by someone who has been a part of a great community initiative. Through her work with Bikes Without Borders, she helped bring access and opportunity to kids by providing free bikes to those who needed them the most. While the organization is now closing its doors, its impact it created continues to live in the communities it served.
Inform, connect, inspire. The Post Podcast.
Right.
Well, welcome, Tanya, to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
So, can you start telling us about yourself and the journey with Bikes Without Borders and how you got into involved and how all that came to be?
Sure. It's kind of a long history, so I'll try and make it a little succinct. But I founded Bikes Without Borders back in 2008, so quite some time ago, with my partner at the time and some other fellow cyclists and a lawyer. And we had decided that we had been doing some work with my partner's company that was bringing bicycles to different areas that they were already working. They're sort of piggybacking on that work. And we were seeing some pretty innovative and imaginative and super effective ways that those bicycles were making a difference. And this was mainly abroad. And that led to us kind of going, hey, like there's something here. And we started researching. There were only a few other organizations at the time around the world doing sort of international work, which led us to decide, well, maybe we could play a role in this in Canada and sort of incorporate it as a nonprofit, held our first bike drive along with Mountain Equipment Co-op. And then that snowballed into us eventually getting some funding, running some big fundraisers, and then getting our, a couple of years later, our charitable status. And we just went from there. And essentially what happened early on is we were putting a lot of focus on international work in different ways that bicycles that are going unused here could be transported there. We were also looking at in sort of innovative ways that bicycles could play a role, as in bicycle powered water pumps and different mechanisms that the bike could not just transport and not just recreation could play a role. So that eventually, because we had such a presence online for bike drives, we started getting approached by local organizations, a lot of newcomer agencies, social service organizations. They were looking for, there was, I think in particularly in Toronto, as our population increased, people were looking for affordable and alternative forms of transport. And then eventually we realized that there was a significant role we could play locally as well. And so as time went on, most of our work has now transitioned away from international work, but we still do what we do, or what we have been doing up until recently, is we take in bicycles and we get quite a few of them. We triage them. We look at where the sizes of bikes, the demand is, say, locally, which is a lot of newcomers for us. And so we get families with young children and people trying to use it for transport. And before Uber Eats and electric bikes became a thing, we actually played a fairly significant role in a lot of bike careers. So they would come to us as their sort of their first job. We would help them get a bike and launch their first career. And when food delivery was done on a bicycle that wasn't electrically powered, and then over time we made a name for ourselves. So I think that's what's happened, is that we didn't even have to work hard at finding bicycles any longer. People were donating them to us quicker than we could
That's so
them
nice.
out, and things like that. So yeah, that's the history.
That's wow, it's very extensive, like you said. Well, I'm glad. Like, what kind of the goal, the goals of the organization was mostly to give people bikes that were in need of bikes and to get people active. Is that
Kind of. So our mission is considered quite broad, and we liked it that way, because we were interested in charitable work that could adjust to how the world was moving, that was malleable to a certain extent, that was innovative. So we were looking to try things, willingly fail at things, willingly, that sort of thing. So our mission has always been using bikes as tools for development in marginalized communities around the world. So basically, we're trying to sort of say a bike is a really sort of almost a basic construct. It's a thing that your body can move, and it can be used in a myriad of ways to really help people. So yes, what tends to happen is that we get a lot of people coming to us for recreation use, like your organization. Like, we're trying to help families have access to this sort of affordable transportation, affordable, healthy thing they can do with their family. There's, the obvious uses of bicycles, but then there's also, it might help someone with their job. It might help someone with their mental health issues if they're trying to address any health issues in general, things like that. So it has been broad, and we've kept it that way. And we've sort of adapted as there's funding that comes in, or adapted as the need seems to change, or as people, really reach out to us and say, we've worked with the Canadian Mental Health Association, where they were doing pilot projects on, trying to get people outside and doing activities. We've worked with Culture Link Settlement Services, where they have their bike host program, where they help newcomers specifically by loaning them a bike and actually matching them with people to help teach them how to navigate the city, often with pamphlets of their own language, things like that. So we kind of had what's the figure of speech? Our fingers in a lot of pies,
Nice.
yeah.
I'm
Interpret.
so, to be honest, your mission and bikes in general, like, it had actually a big impact in my life as well. Because growing up, I used to bike like everywhere. Because I was like, I was like a teenager and a kid. Like, the only way you're gonna get to places, you can't drive a car, you can't always just be walking very far distances.
Mhm.
So a bike was like literally like my best friend.
Mhm.
So when I heard about your organization and how you guys give out bikes to those in need and those who just getting access to a bike, right? It hits me really hard. So I really appreciate for the work that you have done for our community and communities everywhere around the world
Oh, thank
with the
you.
bikes. It's really cool. But like, yeah, well, I'd interest, like, what got you into biking? Like, what was your age in starting for that?
Good question. Sort of similar to you. Like, I was a young, active kid, but I came from rural Ontario, where we biked around to our friends' homes and things like that. But where I think where it really um, became a big part of my life was when I came to the city, and I was a university student, and I was putting myself through university for 6 years. And I took like, I think out of necessity, affordable necessity to get to my jobs, is I became a city cycling commuter. And then I cared about and got very involved with Cycle Toronto and the other advocacy organizations. And I deputized actually twice in City Hall to support cycling laws. And this was outside of my role of Bikes Without Borders. This was more advocacy related. But I kind of became a dedicated commuter cyclist, so much so that when the pressures to own a vehicle, which are those pressures are real in the city, especially once I had three children who were joining hockey and baseball and different things, where it becomes very hard to navigate the city without a car. We
Mm,
were quite dedicated in our family. We purchased bike trailers. Then we went and I still have our 12-year-old cargo bike. And I tried very, very hard to stay a commuter cyclist as long as I could. And I think we made it to the ages of 13, 10, and 13 with our children, with three children in the city, still using our cargo bike mainly. And I still cart my groceries and my dog and things around in my cargo bike quite a bit.
oh my
So,
God.
and to this
Jordan.
day, I have several bikes. We have road bikes, mountain bikes, a commuter bike, and a cargo bike. And so it's always been a large part of my life. And yet I think I have a very grounded sense of cycling in the city, and also as a person that now has like a minivan with my family, trying to see how important it is to sort of support the cycling infrastructure and things, but I scrutinize it a little bit differently now, and I'm,
It makes
engaged
sense.
in
It
different
is.
ways. Yeah, yeah,
You ever
yeah.
like carry some bikes in the van, back of the van while you're
All the time. Our van has carted a lot of bikes. Yeah,
right?
it's
It makes sense.
for Bikes Without Borders. Yeah. Um,
Exactly.
I
I
have
mean, just
been,
like for family, like just like when you're out on the road, going places,
yeah,
just for
yeah,
yourself, right? Okay,
yeah.
you did mention you had a lot of different bikes. What would you say is your favorite one? Like favorite, like kind
The
type
cargo bike, undoubtedly, to be honest.
of.
There's, in some ways, you're sort of embarrassed. You've got this great big thing that you're carting around the city, but I just feel really safe in it because people tend to treat me better as a cyclist when I have the cargo bike.
Cargo
They
bike?
see
Yeah.
it as like sort of different. I can see that they visibly see me better. I'll have often a kid in it or something. So people tend to drive safer around me in the cargo bike.
Oh, that's
It
good.
slows me down a little bit, so I can't move as fast across the city. But the way I see it is that it's heavier. I'm getting my exercise, and
Mhm.
you
It's like
know,
in ways
hidden.
kind of like a weighted like steps. Like you know how a farmer's walk is?
Yes, I do. I know
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
kind of like that. But like
more
hey, you're getting
exercise into
more
my day.
exercise,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and weight, and yeah, all of those things.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I think that sounds more fun because you can also carry stuff with it too, right? Not just
Oh
your
yeah. I
yeah.
have I like when you have three teenagers that eat, I am pretty much going to the grocery store every other day, times every day. It feels like they eat the equivalent of a cargo bike full of groceries a day.
Oh
And so
wow.
I do that. And I've done a lot of like carting things around the city that are actually it's just easier and quicker than me trying to figure out how to
Take the
uh,
subway or
take the
just
subway. Yeah,
right.
our traffic is so difficult that even when you own a vehicle, you're often um, yeah, quicker on a bicycle, depending. I do a lot of Google
I
Maps.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Like sometimes a route that would have taken me like on a car maybe like 15 minutes. On
Hmm.
the bike, it's like 10 because like no traffic. You're basically always on the go, right? And you basically have a free trail. And actually, like the area I usually live in, Markham, they
Hmm.
actually just recently had made bike trails for us to ride around. So I
You mean
noticed
bike
that,
or bike trails?
yeah, like actually like a space for people to bike, like just men, because we used to only have because we usually have a sidewalk. That's where
Right.
we bike back in Markham. I mean, I know in Toronto they actually have specific areas for you to bike on the
Yes.
roads, but if you go to like other big cities, they don't actually have a bike trail like meant for
Yeah.
biking only.
Yeah, there's different, yeah, there's trails that might like interconnect things, and then there's like the bike lanes that are
I meant
on
to say
car
lane. I
lanes.
meant to say lanes.
Are you saying lanes? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, yeah,
So yeah, and oh, that's good for Markham. And I know Burlington is doing a great
yeah.
job.
I think they're
I mean, a
spreading
lot
it
of
a little bit.
cities and municipalities certainly are always trying to support these sort of more environmentally friendly and healthy options for people
Mhm,
that feel safe. Because I have to say that you're talking to an obviously historically very cycling oriented person.
mhm,
And yet I actually discourage my teenage children from cycling most of the time. And I think that that would be a big debate with a lot of people because I should be teaching them. But in the sort of busyness and stress of our lives, and the fact that they are so often not with me, and because they haven't learned to be a driver and navigate roads yet, the safety concerns are significant enough that for me, I'd like to see them be a full adult, have full awareness, understand the full risks of being on the road,
mhm.
and or I'm helping them trying to figure out a route that is mainly bike lane, oriented, so they are safer.
I get
It's a
what you mean. It is
serious
very
situation. Mhm.
mostly in Toronto where cars are like everywhere, people are like not paying attention. 100% I agree with you in
So
Toronto.
many variables now, and
Yeah.
so it's nuanced, right? Like the the role that we would play, even as a cycling charity, I was often trying to sort of examine the work we do from like the standpoint of like what is the most effective way that we can operate. There was no doubt that there was a lot of bikes being donated and going unused that could be going to use. And then there was a lot of potential need. And then the resources it would take to ensure people understood safety, that they had been, so we were kind of starting to do programming that was more oriented towards, we actually
Oh,
started partnering with the Toronto Police so that when we went into communities, we weren't just handing out a bicycle, we
you're
were
also teaching them how to use it
how
correctly.
to use it. And and we were often trying to figure out how we could find, it's very expensive to fix up a bicycle. People picture it as like this gift. They like, oh, I gave you my free bike that might be worth resale like a couple $100s. Let's say it's a decent super cycle,
Yeah.
which is often what we get because if the bike is worth a lot, they're not donating them to us. They're trying to sell them on their own. So we get mid-range bikes, and then to actually fix them up could be costly. It
It
could be
is. It's very costly.
$10 and my staff time so we always sort of looked at the average, like a bike actually costs us about $50 to fix up because some bikes might come in great condition and only cost us $10, $5 and a new tube and a bit of oil and a bit of time for our staff or hopefully our volunteers to save us money. And then we might have a bike that requires new brakes, pads, and a whole new wheel or things like that. And that might cost us $50 or $100. And we're
Wow.
sort of kind of going, okay, and that doesn't count trying to ensure we have space to, so all of the very
Yeah.
significant funding issues that we have a website we can run, that we communicate with people, all of which I always felt we weren't doing a great job at
Oh,
because we were
okay.
so trying to function on such a small budget. But then I was sort of proud of that at the same time. Like we were able to
Do so
uh,
much with so little.
kind of. And I'm a bit heartbroken in the end that we lost our space because there is a lot of unused space in the city
Mhm.
that could be going to this kind of use. And we did manage to, for many, many of our years, use spaces in this city that were going unused. But it took a lot of work on my part, usually my part, volunteer time of like chatting with the city of Toronto, working with our local councillors, knocking down doors until we found a sponsor or somebody that was interested in kind of going, well, I have a big, ING Direct actually housed us in their basement of one of their big like flagship stores that
Oh,
turned into Tangerine on at Shooter and Young at Eaton Center. So for 2 years, we actually were in
wow.
this like 1,000 square foot basement of ING Direct operating out of there. And then they got bought out by, or they got acquired by Scotiabank. We had to move out because we didn't fall
Mhm.
within their sponsorship
For sure.
contracts anymore. So then the Toronto Parking Authority said, well, we've got this building that will eventually be torn down into condos, but currently you could use it for the next year or two. And we moved into that space. And then Amsterdam Brewery, and so we were
Just
really
always on the
lucky.
move, moving things.
But I mean, and then that in and of itself is a major expense. And, you have to be able to move. And it's no small feat to move a massive shop with multiple
Multiple
things.
bikes, multiple parts, multiple like everything.
Just like the bike, there's lots of moving parts to keep it actually going. It might look really simple, but there's a lot of things,
I
and
do know what you mean. It's not as simple as just wheels and like gear. Like there's a lot of pieces to a
yeah,
bike.
yeah,
Being a bike rider myself, I know how many times like I've been to the repair shop many, many times for just small
yeah.
things.
And it can feel really expensive, I think, for people, especially when you're trying to save money and operate on little. So I always try to talk about bikes that they're an investment that is seriously inexpensive compared to, if you had to Uber somewhere or,
Or just like
um,
cars itself. Like
yes.
how many repairs do you have to do for a car, right?
Yeah.
It's way more expensive.
I always say to people, expect to put $100 into your bike every year. And they kind of look at me like, oh my God, that's crazy money. And I'm like, that is nothing. That is nothing. That is an investment.
How much the mostly knowing the gas prices these days? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
$100 for a few repairs here and there. It's not like it's always going to be that too, right? And who knows, maybe over time you even learn how to repair some of those small things yourself.
Yeah. And we did that. So like some of our programs that we got back when you could more easily get recreation grants for this kind of stuff through the city of Toronto, we would focus on repair workshops. So it would be kind of an earn a bike program, which a couple other charities are
Oh
now doing.
wow. Did you ever like do like a program or like they're literally from scratch and they just kind of build it up? Like maybe each week they slowly kind of build up.
Kind of, yeah, kind of. They call them Build a Bikes. And I know that Charlie's Free Wheels, which is a chair like that, their organization kind of slowly grew over the time that we did as well. And we did some partnerships with them way back in the day, but they do a lot of build a bike. So they help teens really learn how to build a bike from scratch. We've done a small handful of them in the past that we tended to let them pick a bike that they were attracted to amongst our stock
Mhm.
because and like yeah, everybody has their own vision of the style of bike, it's
Yeah.
sort of an expression of themselves, and then we would help them whatever stage it was in to build it back up to like really top-notch working condition if it needed new saddles, if it needed new tires, if it needed to the gears fixed and things like that. And then these were teenagers And we were also trying to engage them with like, okay, you're learning how to do this yourself. And then we went out and tried to put them on the road and teach them how to navigate
Oh
the
my
city.
God. I would love to see like if you have like any film or videos of that. That sounds like such a fun
We
time.
have a lot of photos of that. Yeah, I don't know how much film we have of that. It was a long time ago. It was in St. Jamestown in downtown Toronto, like not far from where neighborhood information post is. But um, yeah, there was to me endless opportunity for this city to invest in that type of stuff, but it was difficult, to acquire funding, the resources it takes to put together proposals and partnerships that meet all the demands of funding
Yeah.
were some of the most challenging parts of operating, I would say, and kind of make it prohibitive and very hard for those charities. So I actually, I would say even now, if anyone's listening to this, that if they're hesitant to donate a bike to one of those organizations that are at the universities, like there's Regenesis, that there's Bike Pirates and Charlie's Free Wheels, and like all these other different little charities that sometimes do profit driven models. So you might donate their bike, but they might fix it up and sell it. There's no issue with that because the resources they need to be able to operate, to offer, to teach people and engage people with bikes is worth it. So sometimes people, like we tried very hard to we never sold things unless someone donated something that was hard for us to so sometimes like we get like race bikes, old
Oh,
school
old school like
race.
vintage.
And the type of work we would be doing for a long time would be maybe with newcomer agencies where they're just not going to use that. They're looking for like commuter bikes with, they can put their kid on the back of and things like that. And so we'd end up storing all these bikes until the right person came along, the right donee. And so what we eventually did is ask people to tick a box in the event that we need to sell it. And I think we only really sold like two bikes in our whole history, sort of thing, where the bike was just so outside of
Like
our
your
use.
scope that you usually do.
Yeah. And so we would, in those cases, we put them online and asked people to make a donation, which was good for them because they could get a receipt. And then we kind of did this sly way of kind of saying, could you instead, do this? But then realized that that's not really a model we wanted to work in. We wanted to just sort of try to continue to take in donated bicycles cheaply as possible, donate them back out to people who need them as quickly as possible, as the smallest economic footprint we could make
Yeah,
happen.
that's
Yeah.
good. What would you say since you have so many like difficult times with running this system, what would you say is like your most impactful, like the best moment that really captures like bike route borders, like your favorite moments that made all the things you went through worth it?
Okay, this is a good question because um if we were to speak really vulnerably about running a charity like this, especially when it's one you've started, um I think there's like burnout that happens where you're sort of giving out your whole life to making something thrive and you never quite feel like it is thriving
Mhm.
because you're just running into hardships all the time. And so it's this like, oh my gosh, I'm working my tail off. And so um I often felt like giving up, and some of our partners are not partners, like people that started the organization with me did give up and just sort of they had other goals in life and they felt like they'd given, and that's valid. But what sucked me back in all the time was the so when we first start, so we worked with different models of how we donated it out. And the last bunch of years, we actually had this system that worked most efficiently for everybody, where we worked with like neighborhood information posts, where we tended to organize a larger donation of many bikes at once to an organization that's already intimately engaged with people who marginalize people. And then that way we're just sort of like fixing those bikes and we're like passing them off to you. And we're a middleman, so to speak. And then you are working more closely with the people who are actually receiving the bicycles. Um, Prior to that, we had it open to people could approach us individually. So they could seek us out, and they tended to find us through, we had put the word out, emails to different shelters and again, social service agencies that are all working with marginalized communities of different sorts. And so we would say George Hall Boys Home, that works with teenage boys. They thought to themselves, like, oh, where can we get some bikes for these guys? And this one staff there wanted to do a bike trip to Niagara and back,
Oh, wow.
for instance. And so we were getting all the time, we were getting like these little approaches from people. And those interested me the most because I think they're the most effective because that is someone else who is working closely with people who has identified like this could work for us. And then we just want to be this kind of catalyst to like make that happen. We're like, okay, let's make this happen together. We have a source of bikes that we can get you. We have ways that we can teach your kids and, work in that capacity. But back in the day when people could approach us individually, that really kind of kept pulling me back in because it kind of
Getting to see the people that you're giving the bikes to.
yeah, and I mean, like they would show up, and you were suddenly every single time. My staff would talk about this all the time. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how to address this issue." But like a father and daughter, 4-year-old daughter would show up who are newcomers, who were refugees from Syria. So we had a lot of Syrian refugees at one point that we were working with, or Ukraine. We had a ton, and we worked specifically with agencies targeting the newcomers from Ukraine
Mhm.
and their stories were tragic and they had nothing and they were in big hotels kind of that were converted into these
Shelters?
temporary living conditions that were awful
Mhm.
and they had kids and so all of a sudden we were like, oh my god, they're like, well, we know 20 other kids in our hotel type infrastructure that need bike or could like it's such a cheap and easy thing for them to go do with their family. So we were like, then boom, 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 we're trying to get these bikes to these people and and then they wanted to chat with you so they'd be telling you their story and all of a sudden we had to budget for the fact that one donation of one bike to one guy who came from Rwanda and was in a shelter might cost me 2 hours of my staff's time just talking with him, sizing the bike, and donating it out to him. And we were often trying to figure out how to make it more accessible for them because when we were down at the Eaton Center, we could say get on the subway and meet us there. But when we were way up in the Amsterdam Brewery, we were in Leaside and we were less accessible. So then I found myself carting bikes around in my van or trying to find, and we often had some really generous volunteers that were, people with a car or a truck who would drive the bike to people wherever they were, which were often, in Scarborough or Mississauga or, places like that, Thornhill. Like, so it is a bit tricky figuring out how to do it without burning yourself out. But
Mhm.
every time you meet somebody and make a difference, I think you get a little bit like lit up and that tended to keep me I had a lot of troubles at the idea of letting it go because it seemed so effective in its own way
Mhm.
and um
But yeah,
a pity that it took so little. Like I was like, oh, we can make this happen if we have a space, we have the equipment, we have people who want to help. We just need admin type of structure and funding to make sure that all those moving parts can happen.
Mhm.
And then we need a source of bike parts, some kind of fundraising for that. And then we need to figure out how to engage volunteers. Do we educate them to fix up bikes? That sort of stuff. And really, we operated on very little staff for most of our years. Yeah.
Must have been very like, and new staff, old staff, new volunteers coming in and out. It was just probably very hard to keep track of everything, I'm
Well,
guessing.
volunteer management is an animal in and of itself, right? Because there are people that are not working for funds, and sometimes they need to be working for you. Kind of like we've had people that were volunteering as a way to build a resume in hopes of getting a job somewhere with us. We've had, our best volunteers were often retired people who were just genuinely looking to make a difference, but you could lose them or it didn't suit their schedule. So you might invest a lot of education in a volunteer and then they move out of the city, or they decide they have a different interest and stuff. So you can't rely on them. You don't have them on contract,
Mhm.
So
I know what you
so
mean.
that's in and of itself. But it also tickled me when we had such generous volunteers,
They'll come in and help, and it's just nice to see that when you're putting your heart and soul to something, that there's not is not just you doing it. There's other people coming in and helping you in those times. Even if
Yeah.
it's just a little bit. They might not be as dedicated, obviously not as dedicated as you are, but even just a little bit of a push, it's just very nice to
So
have.
helpful. And yeah, there were some pretty dedicated volunteers. We've had board members that gave so much to our charity and things like that and worked right alongside us. That was kind of an astonishing amount of generosity. And like that's what keeps you kind of excited and lit up. You're just it's heartwarming all the time. It's a slog running a charity, all of the other stuff I said. And sometimes when you're not daily, when you were writing reports and getting rejected for funding and, losing your space and having to move or losing your volunteers and stuff, that becomes really, really difficult. But all of those other heartwarming moments that I'm describing are really impactful. You're just like, oh, this is why you do it.
Why you
Right.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do programs like this matter for our communities?
It's so interesting. This was working in the charitable sector and the nonprofit sector was new to me. My education was actually in the arts, and I shouldn't actually say totally new to me. I was in the arts, so a lot of arts organizations are charities
Welcome. Yeah.
and stuff. But in this way, so it's one thing to try to help build a play with a theater or something like that. It's so different engaging directly with people that you're trying to help, and you're spending a lot of time, um, kind of more time than people realize, sort of identifying a problem, being open to like I've said before, adjusting and sort of being innovative about that like thing that you're trying to address. And then so we were doing it through the lens of like how can a bike make a difference, and like I said, people started to approach us. They still do. They still do. Like it happens a lot. It surprises me. So there will be, I swear I could write a book on all the stuff that happens behind the scenes that we never had a chance to talk about on a podcast or even put on social media. We were running so on such thin funding and
Mhm.
prioritizing exactly where we thought it needed to go that we weren't getting a chance to spend on other areas that could have been pretty effective, frankly. So to really answer the question is like these kinds of programs are all nuanced. They're all, I would trust now more as a person that, so say I was like on a funding committee or working for the city of Toronto, which I'm sort of like looking at now. I'm like, oh, I could play a role here. I have some knowledge and some experience with like how this kind of programming
Would
can
work.
be effective. And you're identifying a role you can play, and you are trying to kind of go, well, there's this idea and there's this idea. There's a lot of brainstorming that I think happens or should, in my books,
Mhm.
happen in nonprofits and charities. And because we have such funding restrictions. So like I find if I were to, I'm off topic here for your question a little bit, but if someone was listening and they were asking me about, or we were discussing limitations for these kinds of programs, or I bet, and I've sat in the room at little conferences and things with other charities, like local charities, and we've all kind of gone, yeah, we're all a little bit adjusting our operations to suit funding. Right. So that we know, oh, say the city has this kind of grant and they only give it where we're working with young people, or they only give it if we're working with, this kind of thing. So you're trying to meet these things, um, to be able to even stay alive as a charity, to be able to get funding, or you're trying to like burn out, trying to run your own big fundraisers every year or approach sponsors endlessly. And they have to really dig what you're doing. So like that's how we ended up with Amsterdam, right? Because they had beer marketing that was oriented to bicycles and it was a match, but we had to kind of like figure that out. We had to like approach like people who are into bikes and and that sort of stuff,
That
because
takes a
how
lot
do
of
we
time
convince?
too, right?
Yeah, totally.
Most.
So you know I think the to answer your question, like which I'm not sure I did, but um these programs are sometimes integral to identifying how to make a difference. There's sometimes, and I wish that we could figure out collectively how to really use that resource, how to ask the charities, like, where do you think funding could make the most difference?
Mhm.
Where are you identifying that you could, and instead of like you adjusting to suit a Trillium grant and you adjusting to suit a Medcalf grant or that kind of thing, because you're desperate to do your operation. So there's some um, debate and discussion that I think around the efficacy of these kinds of programs. Am I a big believer in them? Yeah, sure. Because I'm doing it, but do I kind of almost resent having to spend all the time articulating the efficacy of them
Yeah,
in
it's
report and stuff? And the resources it takes, like that's why we don't have a lot of video, like when you say of those programs. I think, oh, like I remember I hounded for that particular program that was in St. Jamestown. I hounded Photographers Without Borders, which is a small organization at the time, to get a photographer for free to come out and take photos, and so we could lend some credibility to the work we were doing. But really, we were so busy working on so little to run the actual program that the money and resources it took to show people what we were doing and to storytell is sometimes draining, you know.
it is. It's a lot of
It
like
is.
you get to prioritize what's more important, the show or just doing like just
Well, and then there's a debate about that because sometimes for a while you might need to show more in order to do more because
hard
it
to
brings,
prioritize what's more important in those moments. And it's like it's not like you have all day to think about tactically, like sit down, like okay, from these real things we have done in the past, these
yeah.
things we've done better, but like you're always moving. You don't have that chance and time to just have that time to just like sit down.
No. Oh, I always get my hair up a little bit because, naturally new board members would identify the very thing that I'm very aware of, which is, hey, we're not doing a good job of storytelling. We're not very present on social media. Hey, we're not using all these other like arguably free potential resources to let people know what we're doing. And we need to do that or we're not going to get funding. And, after a while, the burnout was so visceral for so many, so for me, especially with three children, and that I realized I was like, I kind of stood back and went, I'm actually just going to kind of quit all of that, trying to do all that stuff. I'm not going to, it's going to be low priority for me to post on social media. It's going to be low priority for me to care about that stuff. And I'm going to sit and hone in on like how we can operate on the smallest amount of money.
Mhm.
So, and then we did that for years up until just this last month. Like
This one, yeah.
we literally decided that was low priority and like the work we were doing was more priority, and I didn't need to make it, the pressure to make tons of money wasn't there because what I was trying to do is like fund my own job and fund my staff's jobs and things. And I thought that's okay. I can volunteer a bit and I will put most of our limited resources instead to actually just recycling bikes and not into too much more. So
Mhm.
but it's a trade-off because then
You have
we
a
weren't.
lot more work to do on those bikes compared to like getting brand new bikes that you can just.
Right. But we were, like a good example is a thing that we were looking to grow, and that I think some other charity needs to do this. And I told a charity about this recently, and I think they might pursue it. And I was like, just book an hour with me and I'll help you. Was it fell in our lap that companies like corporations wanted to do volunteer days, and they really wanted to figure out, we get them all the time, hey, can we like send people to volunteer with you for the day? And your day-to-day operations is hard to know how to engage them. And then we were getting donations of new bikes. So like you said, like some of the bikes that you guys got are from bike builds. So like then we started realizing there's a role we could play in that. We could source bikes and boxes that are new but not built. We could offer a service where we go into what we did this multiple times with Royal Bank. So we went into their employee conference, and for 2 hours, we do a fun competition where the employees are broken up into teams and they have to build these kids' bikes.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so that was such a great model for us, right? So it wasn't just used bikes we were recycling, it was some new, but we weren't purchasing them then. So what we did is we charged Royal Bank. We're like, you pay for the bikes and the boxes. we're going to bring the staff and we're going to try this model of like working together to build them. It's win-win for the corporation. They have like a team building thing that they were looking to fill, and we get brand new bikes and we get seen by a lot of people.
Yeah, you get a lot of attention, you get a lot of business, like not business, but like a lot of views and like opportunities that come lead moving forward, right?
Exactly. So, that was if someone were to say, what do you need a little leg up with doing? I would have put it into marketing that so that we had a fancier website with some pamphlets then and marketing staff or some kind of staff to approach and get the word out that we are offering the service, figure out how you staff that, how you adjust to schedules because they're always like random days. So there's a lot to think about,
Mhm.
but it's an example of like an organization like ours where we kind of started to piece together as people approached us with, like, so there's these other team building companies that charge an arm and a leg. And I was like, well, we can do it half that price.
Otherwise, yeah.
And it's win-win for us. And so then, but we weren't as set up in a glossy way as they were yet.
Yet.
Right. And so that's like, yeah, just sort of another example of like the kind of work that you're adjusting to do to get, arguably even cheaper or better bikes because they're new and they're funded by somebody else and kids love that, right? A nice new glossy bike. And so,
Were to start a similar organization once again, how would you like do things differently? Like for anyone that's wanting to
oh, to
continue
start a
kind of what they're
charity or
doing.
something. Well, I mean, oh gosh, it's so personal to where you're at in life. So I think all the things we did early on in our charity, we had the energy as young people. We timed it well because we identified that cycling was really booming here in the minds of people. It was the era of like greening things and really people starting to care about the environment. We were fortunate that what we wanted to do was easy to a certain extent to get people to support. And I think I'm not sure I do too much differently, except that in my personal sort of reflection on it, is that I had a lot of troubles just, and I still kind of contend with this, is that I volunteered a lot of my time. I only took a wage periodic years, and most of the time I was working sometimes part and full time for nothing. Um, and it harmed my career growth, and I sometimes go, would I have been more effective to get out to have gone to law school and and be making a difference in some other way. And I would caution someone, and I do see it a lot, is like volunteer kind of burnout, and you're trying to make a difference, and it can sometimes, I'm now 50 and I kind of go, oh God, like I spent the past 20 years doing this, and now I'm sort of starting over a new career so that I can pay my mortgage and so that I'm not having to get a donated bike. And so so I think it would be really understanding that just like any entrepreneurial business, you're an entrepreneur when you're starting a charity. And so you're kind of going through the motions the way you're starting a business. And most coaches, so like my partner also works in this industry as coaching people, you will talk to entrepreneurs and they are working 24/7 and they are having a hard time leaving work at work. And they are you need to be prepared and have the space and maybe even the financial um, wiggle room to give a lot. And so, I think over time I identified that the people we get ambitious young people who feel they have the time and they're developing skills and a resume and they're great for charities and nonprofits, and then retired people where they have the time and space and the financial like space as well
To give.
to to just give. And so then you're doing it from a place of low pressure. Um, and I think you can just give more when when you're not worried about your own mortgage at the same time.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And then yeah, I think there's a lot of edgy. I like started taking courses at Ryerson when it was Ryerson in nonprofit management. I was sort of switching gears from the arts and having a sound understanding of just basic nonprofit management, governance models. How fundraising is the hardest part.
Um,
It was for us. And again, I think it's different for everybody else. If you have a charity that's more attractive to funding that's out there, it's easier to get funding. If I think I know all the cycling related charities in this little area and most around the world. And I think we all sort of can see our similar struggles with trying to get the attention because it's hard to get attention even as a great, big, successful, amazing charity that's been addressing big, big problems. We're very niche, right? We're like
Bikes.
bikes only. And in some ways that's great because it is niche like that. And in some ways it's harder to attract interest. And
Because
so
it's so like niche and nobody really, it's like there's bigger problems to most people that
yeah, they're like, well, I'm going to instead give here because I think people are right now we're going through some economic strain for everybody. So
Mhm.
people are cutting back. I think I can always tell it happens to me here when my doorbell rings a lot more and all the charities are really doing funding pushes and it's hard to compete. And it's not even a word I'd like to use, but like you kind of are competing for donation dollars in people's minds.
Mhm.
So that's actually why I kind of stopped a lot of our traditional fundraising. I was just not as interested anymore in hounding people for money and begging people for money. I was like, well, can we do this and instead do it mainly on volunteerism and donated spaces? And could we get donated parts? Could we almost like I had a dream, could we operate a charity on like a zero budget? Like where we almost didn't need
Any so
anything,
outside.
it would be very difficult because there's, administrative things that you can't even picture just to own and run a website or, small things. But you could almost figure out how to run a charity on nothing if but that relies on a lot of people's free time and that's quantifiable too, right? So
It's a lot. It's very hard. And those volunteers that do come and go, they don't always have all the time to help, right?
no, I mean nobody does. And then you don't even want to ask. Sometimes I've been begging past volunteers, like, it turns out that this guy's sick and we have this bike build for Royal Bank. Can you show up? And because you're not paying them. So sometimes I kind of had to attach to things that were really important. Like so say we were doing teaching a mechanics workshop at a school and they had to show up, but they're volunteers. So there's such a big chance that they may not show up, right? Or like we're low priority in their life because they're like, well, I'm not getting paid for this. And I would have to offer an honorarium or, because there's no contract really we have a volunteer contract, but that doesn't guarantee the commitment that you get out of an employment contract, which is different. And so, yeah, these are the little things you're negotiating when you're operating a charity in your head all the time.
Mhm. So from after finishing with Bikes Without Borders, what do you say is like your next steps that you're moving toward?
Me personally,
Yeah, is there anything of interest or anything that after, it was a big part of your life, right? That Bikes Without Borders and, you did stop it for reasons, right?
yeah.
All those accomplishments, you should be very proud of yourself for all you've done. I wish there was like a chart that said how many of bikes you gave, how many miles did these
I know. I may yet kind of try to like do some kind of closing, but then again, it's like I don't have very much time or money, and so how much am I going to give to that communication? Although I think I'll hopefully get to it, and it'll help me in my future careers to kind of say, here's the difference we made for this long. Um,
I mean, not even just for other people, just for yourself.
For myself, yeah, true. I so I've been doing a lot of obviously like looking at my life where I'm at now at my age, what I had learned, what my interests are, where I feel there's maybe some better financial security for me. Um, I'm not discounting the charitable sector in my life. I might be able to take, I'm quite interested in taking my skills
Maybe helping out other charities that are in need.
that are maybe actually more aligned with what I was doing prior to bikes. So in the arts. So like I've got my eye on women in film and television right now, and they're an organization that specifically sort of works with propelling women in the film and television industry. And I have volunteered for them a lot in the past. I'm a creative at heart. I miss that big part of my life. So I'm now sort of I'm spending a lot of time. I've taken multiple courses over the past 2 years, and I'm chatting with people and setting up meetings and trying to assess the current landscape of the arts where there's a dearth of or where there's employment need that maybe could be filled and I should target. I'm looking at the potential of re-educating in certain areas. So I've kind of lots on the table for me. It's a hard time. I mean, right now you hear it on the news, jobs are hard to find, period.
But I
And
feel personally with someone with your level of like life knowledge and experience, like I feel like anyone will love to have you in their.
oh, that's so sweet. That's really sweet. I do not feel nearly as secure as you do. But yeah, I have to kind of get over that because I do feel like I'm kind of been working in my own little silo for a while, and I'm not quite sure how those skills translate to other jobs, but we're gonna see.
Yeah, I mean,
Building my
I
confidence.
can literally just break it down for you, everything that, your skills and just life experiences and how that would be so beneficial to any organization, charitable or just a normal business. Like
There's,
it all
I
depends
hope.
on what you really want to do, what matters to you, and where you want to move forward with all of this. And just know, I'm pretty sure, like even like the kids recently that you gave donated bikes to us for, like I already could tell they were very happy and very excited. And like just remember, like even if Bikes Without Borders is no longer available giving out bikes anymore, those bikes are still out there and there's still people riding them. And I don't know about you, I had handy downs growing up too, so with the bikes. So those bikes usually live a long life. So
I
just
hope those other charities really keep it. Like one of the saddest things is I am still getting, and I'm just passing them on now. I have like an email template that I am getting once a week. It's usually a condominium, and they say, "Hey, we've got all these bikes," and they want to give them to a nonprofit or charity. They're not loving the idea of giving them to like people who make money off them. But it is hard for those charities and even the nonprofits that still sometimes have to sell some of their stuff. It's hard for them to keep going and figure out how to pick up bikes and things like that. But I'm getting approached constantly with all these bikes that are going unused, and I go, "Oh my God, I hope those aren't ending up in a landfill." And I wish I could
yeah,
convince the city to
that's
like
I feel like
invest
they
in
should
these.
at least go to schools, like public schools, like any
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Yeah. But getting a bike from A to B. So like, let's say you're in
the travel
Mark.
cost.
There is like it's not so easy. Like theoretically, I think, or on the surface level, people go, I've got these two bikes. I should be able to give them to like some charity, right? And I'm like, well, for you, you have to bring that. So eventually we got very specific. Like, here's the 4 locations you can drop off a bike, and that's it. And we were trying to grow, right? Like we had a dream of, we had a couple police stations, and we had a dream of getting fire stations and police stations to be drop off locations. And because they usually have some little like closety kind of area, they can shove a couple bikes. And then like once every 2 weeks, someone
Just
goes around with a
walking,
volunteer van and picks them all up and brings them to us. But just think of that, the time it takes
just
to
set that up.
organize that and to set and have meetings with each and sign forms and liability issues and talk to your insurance company to just pick up those bikes at those places. So
It's
it looked like it should be
nightmare.
super easy. It's not.
The
And
logistics.
then, who's going to come all the way out to Leaside? We had a bunch of people, if they lived near Leaside, dropping off bikes, but there's people in Etobicoke with bikes. There's people downtown Toronto with bikes. And so, yeah, it's
Like technically speaking, it's just, oh, we have bikes, we want to give to people, but it's as sad as it is, it's not that simple.
not so
A lot
simple.
of logistic issues that go with that, time and making sure they actually get where they need to be. And
Yeah.
like I said, you did a lot. You have done a lot.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
But yeah, how finally, is there any other message you would like to highlight before we end? Anything specific you want to let people know? Like, is there any other organizations that are giving out bikes that they can go to that were similar to? Bikes Without Borders by chance?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's any-
I think I mentioned a few of them throughout, but I would suggest to people that so Bike Pirates is a long-standing organization that I think now has their nonprofit status, maybe their charitable status, I don't know, but they do workshops and they provide a space for people to come in and work on their own bikes, and they're pretty effective. And and so they do sometimes, I think, chart like it's like a pay what you can. I mean, I actually don't know their current model.
Mhm.
And I think that has sometimes turned donors off because they're just a little like questioning iffy. But these guys are managing to make enough money to have a lease space on Bloor Street. And they are figuring out how to service a lot of people in that community. And Charlie's Free Wheels also doing a lot of youth oriented bike workshops and things like that.
Mhm.
And Culture Link. So, like, we've worked for years with Culture Link Bike Hub and the Gateway Bike Hub and Scarborough. So, if you're in Scarborough, the Scarborough Cycles, which we ended up donating a lot of our materials to. So, we got to see their space and the work and stuff that they were
Oh
doing.
yeah, that was really
Yeah. I mean, you can, there's lots of, sometimes even, I often thought like, working almost directly, like you could call up literally like neighborhood information post, right? Like, and say, I have two bikes, and someone might be able to go, okay, drop them off because you could donate them out quick enough. I don't know, but I do wonder about that sometimes. If like, if we once chatted with a bunch of, there was actually a gentleman at the city of Toronto that was having bike drinks, it was called, and he was taking all these charities and people kind of in the scene and trying to put us in a room in a bar to have drinks and chat about these exact questions.
oh
And we brainstormed, like we were like, it kind of needs to be like this well-known website with all of that quick, easy information of like where you can drop a bike and like on a map. So if like you're in Etobicoke or if you're in Markham, here's the closest, easiest place for you to
to do that. Yeah.
do that.
Kind of like an Uber system, but with donations.
Yeah, like it just seemed so plausible. If like, and I kept like fantasizing that some savvy student that needs to do a project for like school would like run, like figure that out and approach everybody and get all their information in a way that they can update it. And because like that's always changing, right? So like for we used to have that on our site. In fact, for many years, you would click on the donate a bike on Bikes Without Borders website, and it would show you where to donate to us, and then there'd be also a list of all the like the organizations I just listed, like
Mhm.
Culture Link. We asked them and we said we are willing, because we know when someone navigates to our website, if the only two locations are so far for them, they're just gonna not donate.
Yeah.
But we could at least be helping if they clicked on our website and they go, oh, okay, well, actually, there's this place over near Jane and Finch or whatever. We'll go there. And then it wasn't like I just approached it from, we're not competing with other charities and for donations of bikes. There's definitely enough bikes to go around.
I feel like it's one of those things where we're not really competing with one another. Like you're all helping. At the end of this day, we want to give bikes to people, right?
Yeah. And you don't
So
have to be scared of, I think that there's a couple organizations that I'm a little wonder about because they can't, like they are like just basically bike shops who are turning over used bikes and selling them. And they will buy a lot of sponsor sort of stuff on. So when you Google like donate a bike, you might get some of those, but it doesn't take much to discern which are legitimate, like program running. You just look at their website for a second and kind of go like, and if they can't name the chair, so if they say there's one in particular I'm not going to name that always stands out because they're a bike shop and they say we donate to charities, and it's never happened. I've never seen it. We were the main charity on the scene for years. And I think, oh, okay, well, maybe you're donating a little of your time, but you're generally funding your bike shop, which to be honest, might be okay because it's hard to run a bike shop, like whatever it takes to get more people on bikes. But if people want to give to right to a very legitimate cause, then, I would say Culture Link and those organizations, Bike Pirates and Charlie's and a few more. And I think we have some listed on our website now still while our website remains live for people to donate to. But they don't have to be necessarily too critical about, it's usually going to go somewhere and at least it's going to be on the road helping somebody.
that's what really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. At the end of the day. Yeah.
We just want people to get out there, ride bikes, be healthy, and just make their lives easier, right? Bikes have so much
Yeah.
functions, and it's so nice to see. And like summer is just around the corner too, so I hope to see more
Mhm.
people riding bikes with all those new ways to
Safe. Yeah, with their helmets on.
have some lights if you're biking the night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's really all that we have here for today. Any last things you want like to mention?
No, thank you so much for asking me. It's such a joy to do my first podcast.
We were more than happy to have you. It was very
Thank you.
fantastic. You did so much. We will probably link all like the websites and things you mentioned in the description below.
Great.
And is there anyone you want to shout out or anything you want to reach out to specifically?
No, if I think of it, I'll send it to you.
Sounds good. Well, thank you once again, Tanya, for joining us, and I hope to see you in the neighborhood.
Yes, great. Hope so too. Take care.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.